So a while ago I put together a series of videos where I covered what I think is the best way of learning, of memorising all of the 3 notes per string scale shapes going all the way up and down the neck. If you're struggling to learn this, or you haven't learnt them already, then that's a great place to start. I would definitely recommend checking those videos out. But the next stage is starting to integrate this, to start to join the dots, to start to connect the scale shapes together, and also to connect them with the chord shapes, the underlying chord shapes that they surround as well. And so what I thought I'd do this week is give you just a series of exercises, a series of stages that you can go through that will help you to do that. And we'll start to integrate the scale shapes together, and we'll start to integrate them and put them in context with their associated chords. So that's what I'm going to do this week. So let's zoom in and I'll start working through it now. Okay, so the first part of this is to understand whether you really understand how to build the chords based on root notes or not. And the easiest way I've found for doing that is to just work through the 3 different positions on the string. We're playing 3 notes per string scales. And let's start by putting the root note on there with my little finger or third finger if you prefer to play the scales like that. But I'm going to put my little finger there, I'm going to assume that's a root. Can I build a scale with that as a root note? If I can't, then the best thing to do really is to pause this video and go back to my other 2 videos that talk about the deep dive into the 3 notes per string scale shapes. And I'll put a link up here as well, just check that out. It's worth working through those because those show you some fundamental shapes that you'll find within 3 notes per string scales that you can use to learn all of the positions going up and down the neck. So if you've got that, a couple of days working through that will give you the basics that you need to be able to do this first stage. And you may not be as proficient as me with the scales, but that's fine. What we're trying to do is learn them to start with. So that's using that as my root note. Let's put it on the B string. Can you build a scale with the root note on the B string and then move it onto the G string? Yeah, and then onto the D, on the A, and on the E string. So just see if you can build the scales where the root note falls onto the third finger of the 3 notes on the string. And then do exactly the same thing, but now put it on the middle finger of the string. So we start with the top E. Can you build a scale where the root note of the major scale falls on that middle finger? And then with it on the B string and on the G string. Yeah, and on the D string. And on the A string and on the E string, and then not surprisingly, we're going to do exactly the same thing with the root note of the major scale falling on the index finger. Yeah, and then you move it across and move it across. So they're the 3 possible starting positions for the scale for the major scale for each of the fingers. So that's the major scale. And then see if you can do it with a minor scale as well. So, you know, let's say we're using the index finger, first finger on that top E. Can you build a scale with that and then move it onto the B string, move it onto the G, D, A and E strings as well. So again, now we've figured out the major positions, major root notes and the minor root notes. Now this is a great starting point, but the next stage is probably more important actually. We're just checking right now to see if we can build the scale shapes. What I want you to do then is to start working with chords. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a chord. We'll start with a major chord. And the chords I actually like to work are the chords that you'll find in the caged system. So this is a C bar chord, the A bar chord, the G bar chord, the E bar chord, and the D bar chord. And these are really useful shapes, and I don't care about crossing systems, and I don't care about crossing philosophies. I'll cherry pick from any philosophy to try and improve my guitar playing. So we're mixing 3 notes per string and scale and cage type philosophies here, but who cares? So we'll start with the C chord. Now within the C bar chord, I know I've got a root note there, and I know I've got a root note there. So can I create the scale where I put my little finger on one of those root notes? So I play the chord and then see if I can play the scale with that root note, or I put my little finger on the other root. You see how I'm coming back to the chord all the time? I'm moving between the chord and the scale and the chord again. So that's with my little finger. Again, how about my second finger? Yeah, or just here. And then my first finger. Yeah, or just here I could do the same thing. So again, that's using the C chord. And then I'll move on to the A chord. Can I do the same thing? I know with the A chord, for example, it's got a root note there and a root note there. Can I play the scale between those two? If I put my little finger on that root note, can I play the scale around it and then come back to the chord again? So I'm building that mental relationship between this chord and the scale positions that are directly associated with this chord as well. And that's the whole point. So I do that between the C chord, the A chord, the G chord, G bar chord, the E bar chord, and the D bar chord. I've covered these in previous videos as well, so again, check the links. I'll try and put a link up here as well. Hopefully that will help you understand these chords a little bit further as well, if this is all new to you. But that again is allowing me to work on the relationship between the chord and the scale. But I don't just stop there. In fact, I prefer to move on from just the root note. One of the problems we have when we're first learning these scales is that we're always thinking about the root note and we're not thinking about the other notes in the chord. So here's my bar C chord, and I know a chord is made of a root, a third and a fifth. There's my root, there's my fifth, my third, my fifth, yeah. So can I play the scale where I put my third finger on the third degree, middle finger on the third degree, first finger on the third degree of the scale? Still staying in the key that we're in, but can I build those scales again? Okay, so what I'm trying to do is to break away from just using the root note as a reference. But see if I can play the scale based on any note that I have within this chord. Yeah? And then the final thing is to see if you can play the chord and start on any note that is outside of that chord but still within the key. So it's a scale note, but maybe I'll start on the second degree. Yeah, or maybe I'll start on the fourth, or any note I want to start on. And again, I'll do all of this and with the minor keys. So instead of starting with C major, I'll start with the C minor shape, which is a bit of a weird shape to play. But again, can I play C minor? I'll start from the C minor chord, and then I'll see if I can find all of the degrees of the minor scale based on that C minor shape. And then I'll do A minor. Based on the fifth degree of A minor. Yeah? So it's all about understanding the scales, making sure I can build the scales, and then making sure I can build the scales within the context of the chords, the associated chords that are based on the root note of that scale. So there's an awful lot of content here, and I wouldn't expect you to be able to work through all of this systematically in one sitting, and I wouldn't actually recommend that you try to do that either. What I would recommend you do is to start to cherry pick, say, a major chord and a minor chord, and maybe cherry pick a finger position or something like that, or a root note or a third or a fifth, and just see if you can work through the scale and the associated chord, connecting them together. And do that one day, and then the next day choose a different major chord position or minor chord position, and see if you can work through a different note as well. And just be systematic about that over the next few weeks, and see how these scale shapes start to connect together, and how you start to see them not just as sort of connected lines of a scale, but as a series of scales associated with the chords as well. So when you see the chord, you know this where the scale tones are immediately for that chord, and you can do that for all of the positions around that chord as well. And when you can do that, that's when it becomes really kind of interesting, because suddenly you've got the neck opens up to you. You're no longer thinking in terms of fragments, you're thinking more in terms of chords, in terms of chordal harmony and the associated scales that you find around that particular chord and that particular chord harmony as well. But play around with it, see how you get on with it, and we'll chat next time. Goodbye.